Hi, everyone. This is Joy Scott, and I'm so happy to welcome you to our Conversations with presentation today with Marianne Splenda on the very rich topic of the Edgar Cayce remedies for health and longevity. I'm going to introduce Marianne formally in a few minutes. First, just a couple of notes about our program this evening. We are sponsored by the Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment here in California. And if you are not familiar with Edgar Cayce, he was one of America's most influential mystics and psychics. And the majority of his readings, although they covered many subjects, dealt with health and longevity and recovery from illness and how to become whole, body, mind, and spirit. And these readings are preserved by the A.R.E, which offers multiple educational programs, opportunities, tours. You can find out more at www.edgarcayce.org. We also have Search for God study groups that are meeting virtually throughout the U.S., here in California as well, and we'll have some ways that you can get involved in that initiative as well. So as mentioned, this is Joy Scott. I'm the LA coordinator for the A.R.E and also the author of the book Magenta Nation, which is a handbook for healing ourselves and healing America. And you can find out more at www.magenta-nation.com. So back to our program today. The Conversations With is a series of dialogues with noted leaders dealing with spirit and science and how we heal ourselves and our world. We do these monthly. They are virtual, and we will also make available the taped presentations after the program tonight. And now on to tonight's program. Marianne Splenda is our guest. She is someone who is well versed in the Cayce material through many years and long-time involvement. She is a lecturer on the Cayce material, on meditation, on developing one's intuition. She is the area team coordinator of Northern California, and it's been in that role for many years, and recently revitalized the regional meetings that were held at Asilomar in California, which we hope we can do again when we can all get together. She is now a member of the A.R.E Board of Trustees. Recently, she has also joined with Thomas G. Allen, Dr. Allen, and his acoustical pyramid ink project, studying the sounds that were used for healing in the Great Pyramid and other ways to apply sound in healing. So tonight what we'll do is we'll have Marianne share her fascinating presentation and demonstrations of some of these remedies and Cayce recommendations. You can submit questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we will answer those questions towards the end of the presentation. So welcome, Marianne. I'm going to now open the screen so you can begin sharing your presentation, and we'll start our conversation. There you are.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you for a wonderful introduction, and it's great for both North and South A.R.E to meet together, especially since we haven't been able to do so at Asilomar. And to all of you that in your homes or wherever you're watching this presentation, thank you for the honor of being invited into your home and sharing subjects that are so near and dear to my heart, and that is the Edgar Cayce information. And especially these days with COVID-19, everything having to do with healing. So with that, is it okay if I start, Joy? And
go right ahead. Let's get started. Thank you.
Let's get this started here. It takes a second for me to get that up. So Joy invited me here to talk about Edgar Cayce and his remedies about health and longevity. But I just want to start by saying happy spring. I mean, yesterday was the equinox, equal day, night. And to me, it's just everything in here, especially in Northern California, bursting forth with life and health and beauty and the flowers. And unfortunately, in this webinar presentation, I can't see your faces, but for me, your faces will be just as vibrant and as beautiful and as healthy as this lily of the field that I'm starting out with today. So let's get started.
Oh, first of all, Marianne, we'd really like to know, how did you get involved in Edgar Cayce, since it's played such a big part of your life and you've really delved so deeply into his health advice?
Well, thank you for the question. And for those who may not know, way back in somewhere around 1980, I had a young girl come to my house to help me. I was married with two boys under 5, a lot of testosterone in that house, a lot to do. And she handed me the book, There is a River, because she thought I could really use that book. And she was really right. I mean, when I got to that philosophy chapter, I just said, yes, finally, something that I can sink my teeth into and believe. And sort of with using that word belief, what I've come to find out, even for Edgar Cayce himself, was that his own family members, you would think that they would have been so awed by this power, they would have believed everything, but that wasn't true. His mother's sister, his aunt, really felt that they needed to call in an exorcist to exorcise the devil out of Edgar. So that would be pretty powerful if your aunt said that to your mom. Then he gets married to a beautiful woman named Gertrude, and she's tolerant of it, but she's not a true believer, as you might suspect that she would have been. And for her, if you've been into the readings at all, you realize that she comes down with tuberculosis and she's getting sicker and sicker, and the doctors of the day can't do anything for her. And even Gertrude was not even asking for a reading. She did not even have that belief at that point in time as she's getting sicker and sicker. But the doctors come to Edgar and say, well, you might as well do that thing you do and give her a reading because she's going to be dead in 5 days anyway.
Mm.
And at that point, Gertrude acquiesces and said, yes, you give me a reading. And it's my understanding that the church that they belonged to at the time actually encircled the house where he gave the reading, where she was lying. And it just gives me the chills to think of the power of those spiritual people putting their minds and their faith in this reading that was taking place. And we know that she did get healthy again, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But then that was her believing moment. Then she believed after that because it was a personal experience. For their son, Hugh Lynn, he was playing with matches around. Edgar Cayce was a photographer, and they had the flash powder, and it went poof right into his eyes. And the doctor said to Edgar, well, we might as well take the one eye out. He's not going to be able to see. But it was Hugh Lynn that cried out, Daddy, Daddy, do your reading, do your thing. You know, you can just imagine this child saying that. And even though it was an unusual reading, calling for unusual circumstances, he did regain his sight, and he could have perfect sight for the rest of his life. Well, I had a believing experience for me. It was back in around I don't remember, in 80s, early 80s. But at the point my marriage was falling apart, and I was actually going to court that day to file for a divorce. And I was between the parking lot and the courts when I just doubled over in pain. It was so bad, I just couldn't move. And I got a hold of my attorney and said, something's wrong. I've got to see a doctor immediately. I just can't take another step. So I did that. I called my doctor and thinking it might be appendicitis because it was lower right-hand side. I went to their office. And after an examination, the doctor said, well, I have to operate on you tomorrow. I said, tomorrow? I have 2 boys, a kid. I don't have the time, is what I thought. But then I also said, I don't have medical insurance. We did not at that time have medical insurance. So there was no way to pay for the operation. I think that sort of cooled the doctor. And so I said, we've got to figure out something else. So I left that office, called my mom, please come help me take care of the kids. I have to be flat on my back for 6 weeks. And of course, in touch with my doctor. But um, what I did was go home and start using a castor oil pack. And I did that day after day after day. And I'll be honest with you, within weeks, when I went back to see that doctor, there was no sign of anything wrong with me, nothing. And I think he was mystified. Well, I think I always mystified that doctor anyway with the things that came out of my mouth. But with this experience, I realized the power of the castor oil pack. In hindsight, the doctor and I decided it was an ovarian cyst, not a tubal pregnancy. That's what he had thought I had. But today I know that I'm not a salesman. I'm not trying to sell you on any of the products or any of the therapies, because as Edgar said, it has to be your own experience. But I do hope you open your mind to a new experience of a new product or a new way of thinking about some of these healing therapies, so it can enrich your life the way it's enriched mine. The other thing I think is real important before we get into specifics of products and therapies is that Edgar Cayce brought to me, and I think a lot of other people, a brand new perspective of who are we? Who are we and why are we here? Because I know in my early childhood education, my father was a biology teacher. So I was taught I was just a freak accident of nature, right? And then when I read There Is a River, whoa, no, we are so much more than that. And this has changed my life tremendously, especially when he said, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So many of you may have heard John Van Auken with his wonderful story. He tells such wonderful jokes. I'm trying to get more humor in my life, but I'm not as funny as he is, that is for sure. But he always tells this wonderful story of here we are, spirits in the universe. We get so attracted to this beautiful blue marble and all of the life, and we get entrapped here because we get into these bodies and we find ourselves in different shapes, sizes, colors, whatever, but we're trapped. And we're now trying to find a way back to our spiritual home. But today we're talking about these Earth spacesuits, as some people call them. They're very temporary spacesuits for sure. And we have the power to make sure that they're fine and healthy, or we can let them decay. It's our choice. So I thought with the talk today, we've just been through a horrendous year, 2020. I saw a joke that said in the future, when somebody's having a bad day, they might say to their partner, how was your day today, dear? And they would say, oh, 2020. So it was that bad for some of us. And of course, here in California, it started, remember all the fires. If you're from Southern California, this slide is showing the 405 right by the Getty Center exit. You know, the fires were in our face. They were near us. I had someone living in my house for 6 weeks because her house was in danger of going up in flames out in Point Reyes. You may have had similar experiences or may have suffered even worse. And then, of course, here we come into March, and all of a sudden we hear a new disease name we've never heard before, COVID-19. What in the world is that? And I will say that as I prepared for this speech, and only Joy can probably remember when she and I first started talking about this talk, and I usually start my presentation about that time to get the ideas down. I put down here COVID-19, how many dead? When I started, there were less than 400,000 dead. And I just kept updating until this morning I went on a website and it said 541,000. And of course it's climbing. So in one way, and sort of a lighthearted way, 2020 was the year, I think, that God sent us all to our bedrooms, all to our rooms, You have to stay there and think about what you've done wrong, the big parent to the little child. And I think we've had a year of really sort of having to sort out why does this happen and how can I stay safe? That, it always becomes personal for us. Well, I don't know where you were when California shut down, but I was actually in Virginia Beach at a A.R.E board meeting. And it was the first board meeting where 3 of our members refused to come, and they were actually there by Zoom. And all of us said, Zoom? What's Zoom? How? And we were just fumbling with Zoom with these 3 people for 2 days. But boy, what a difference a year has made. And of course, here, what I remember in Virginia Beach, I went out. You couldn't buy anything besides toilet paper. Everybody knew that, but you couldn't buy hand sanitizer, wipes, masks, nothing. The shelves were completely empty. And quite frankly, I was not willing to fly in an airplane to come back to California. So personally, I rented a car and drove to my son's house in North Carolina. And I lived there, not going to the store because I'm older and didn't want to get COVID, that type of thing. But it took a while before I felt safe enough to actually fly back to California. So let's get into sort of the flu and the protection things and what Cayce has to say. But I wanted to remind us that pandemics are nothing new under the sun. That's a phrase from the book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. It says there's nothing new under the sun. We just keep revisiting it, hopefully wiser. But this is just a fact about the Black Plague. Killed a third of the population of Europe at the time. In 1920, the Spanish flu was 2 years. And we've had more dead in 1 year than they had in 2 years, but that's population growth. And we don't know where it's going. So just wanted to check in. Are you okay? Are you fine? If there's one thing that's a positive from COVID is that I find we all do check in with each other and say, stay safe. Are you safe? Are you okay? How are you? Sometimes I feel frazzled like this, and I'm sure you do too. I'm itching to get out of my house.
Well, I'm really sobered by thinking about these other pandemics that have come before, and I appreciate also what you're saying about the need to connect and how difficult this one has been, to be patient and try to stay safe and try to stay healthy. It's since Cayce lived through one pandemic, what would he be saying, do you think, about what kind of remedies or what should we be doing to try to keep ourselves safe, given that we know things aren't over yet?
That's true. Well, this is what I sort of feel. We'll get into some of this. And so some of you may have Cayce products in your home that look like the pharmacy there below that. And some of you may be more in the skimpy side. So it really doesn't matter. But let's just sort of go through some of the readings, what he was suggesting to people back in the 20s and the 30s as far as healing. But before we do, I found this quote that I do want to read because it does give that wide vision that Cayce said, for all healing comes from the one source. And whether there is the application of foods, exercise, medicine, or even the knife, talking about surgery, it is to bring the consciousness of the forces within the body that aid in reproducing themselves, the awareness of creative or God forces. So even though I may go down a rabbit hole about food or exercise or medicine, it can even be surgery. And I guess maybe this is a point I should share my own philosophy. Western medicine is very, very good at diagnosing what's wrong. If you want to know what's wrong, go to a Western doctor. They'll tell you right away. And if you actually need surgery, we're pretty good at that too here in Western medicine. The other part of knowing the foods, the exercise, the other holistic parts, not so much. I know I personally talk to my doctor And I actually tell him what Cayce says, because I figure it's sort of a way to open his mind into a broader world of healing modalities. And he goes along with that pretty nicely. And I do need to say, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor or been trained in it. So I think there's a role for Western health. I'm just not a big pharma fan. If I hear a big pharma ad on TV, I go la 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 la, because I don't want my consciousness to have that repetition of what it is or what it does to influence me. But that's just me. Okay, what did Cayce say? One, he would have said boost your immunity, and we know from his readings he had the diet, and many of you are familiar with it. And it's very much like the Mediterranean diet is. It's vegetables and fruits. And for all of you that are vegans or vegetarians, I applaud you. I wish I was there. I'm not. I do love meat and things like that. So it's my own personal struggle to try and align myself with the true Mediterranean, or more 80% vegetables and less meat. One of the things Cayce did say was have a raw salad every day. And the secret ingredients of your salad should be lettuce, carrots, and celery. Now, he also talked about gelatin. I always felt he was talking about gelatin salad. If you're like me, my mother and grandmother used to make gelatin salads, and they'd put cherries or nuts or things in the jello. But I did watch the Japanese movie called The Readings, and I don't know if you can see me. I don't want to pull the screen down, but what they did was they took gelatin. If you look at my face in the little box, you get these gelatin things to make your gelatin salad. They literally pour it on their salad. I thought, wow, that's different. I haven't tried it, but the Japanese don't make gelatin salads. They pour it on their salad. Interesting. Anyway, I do recommend that movie. Also, of course, citrus fruits, anise, onions, garlic, ginger. Doesn't that sound like a wonderful stir fry? I wonder what you're planning for dinner tonight. I wonder if this will
Does
help
sound good.
influence what you're thinking about. Of course, as Cayce said, vitamin C and D, echinacea, and he often gave this Cayce herbal syrup. It's wild cherry bark, horehound, rhubarb, and wild ginger. I will show you a bottle of current sales of that in a bit. Well, going back into March, I was planning to go to Egypt. I was going to co-lead a tour of Egypt with Tom Allen. And so in preparation for that trip, and knowing we were going into third world country, and we were asking how to boost our immune system before we went, I contacted the spirit guide you see on the screen, Dr. Peebles. He's channeled by Natalie Gianelli of Santa Monica. And in his former life, he was a naturopathic doctor, apparently spoke on metaphysical topics all over the West and different places, even in the world. Anyway, he was rattling off some things I should take. And one of the words he rattled through was called thieves' oil. At the time, I didn't ask him what that was, but here I was in Virginia Beach. I had to cancel the Egypt tour, and I'm thinking about my own immune health big time now. And so I went online and I found this recipe that I've got on the screen. There's many different ones. I'm just sharing the one I found and I currently use. It's a blend of essential oils of clove bud, lemon, cinnamon bark, eucalyptus, rosemary. It's about this point I wish computers could figure out how to get scent across the screen. That would be a wonderful development. And you could smell this with it. And I have a picture there showing you that I was in the Wyndham Hotel. I'd gone to Heritage Store and purchased the essential oils and then had mixed them. And so I did have a mask and I have a little eyedropper and I put the drops in the mask. which is what the Black Plague doctors do, if you or did. Um, they may do it today, I don't know. But we have pictures of these doctors with the bird beak, and they would stuff cloth in that beak, and they would put these essential oils in that. So they're breathing this vibrational blend of essential oils. And so when I asked Dr. Peoples later about it, these are what he told me of why it's a really good thing around COVID to put it in your mask. I wouldn't, if you do this, go light. These are strong scents, okay? You don't want to blow your nose out, so to speak, nasal passages. But it's a very high vibrational blend. It's good for the immune system, good for the endocrine glands. And we know Cayce talked a lot about the endocrine glands. And it's used for protection, awareness. And he said basically this concept, the recipe has been held sacred for centuries and actually enhances auric protection, meaning your aura. So it extends beyond the physical into the energy body that we have. So you might want to check that out. He also had recommended for me to go on that tour, so I'm sharing it with you now, these following products that also boost your immune system. Chlorella is actually from seaweed, and it actually absorbs anything your body does not need and then just takes it out of the system. So it's a good cleanser. And B17, if you're healthy, don't do it if you're struggling with your health or immune system. Oil of oregano, apple cider vinegar, vitamin C, D, and D3, getting more sophisticated in our Ds these days. But I just wanted to add move. Do a sacred dance. Get in your living room, turn on Pharrell Williams' Happy or something that you just can't not dance to, and move your body. You just in a sacred dance of your own creation. Now I'm going to go into some specific remedies. I mentioned about Gertrude and her tuberculosis and the charred oak keg. This is what was recommended. And of course you put brandy, and they actually gave it Laird's. But the reason I bring this up is that when I heard about COVID, and I thought, okay, what does Cayce have that protects my respiratory system? And I did not have a charred oak keg. But I tell you, I went online, they're not cheap, but I ordered one and I bought some brandy and got the directions on how to use it. Because if you remember back to March, when we first heard about COVID, people were going to the hospital with COVID and being turned away. Many of them because we didn't have a test. We didn't have an accurate test, I think. That was probably part of the reason. Another part of the reason might have been the doctors and nurses didn't know how to handle the COVID cases initially. And I realized I had to take responsibility. If I wasn't able to get into a hospital and taken care of, I wanted to have this in my house, and I do. Another thing that I've used before COVID, but I love it, this is called Inspirol. It's a bar product, as you can see. It also really helps your nasal passages. If you have allergies, you probably know about it. If you have other things like irritated throat and the swollen mucous membranes, because remember, COVID actually creates this thick, gunky mucus in the lungs, and you have to somehow break this up and get it out. Sometimes with exercise, sometimes with chemicals, whatever. So I keep this around all the time. It actually comes with that little tube. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes, we can.
That's attached. You just pull it off, and the short end you put in the top so that you put that up one nostril and breathe, and that one side, and then do the other and breathe the other. Sort of like a Cayce breathing, but you do it just once on either side. And once again, if you've not used any of these types of products, go gently. Otherwise, you're going because you can't breathe. It's so strong. These actually do what they're supposed to do. So they're not a sweet smelling flower like a rose. They actually penetrate. but
Marianne,
Inspiral.
when you take that little tube, I assume you put it in the top part of the jar where you're
Yes,
getting fumes
let me
without the
stop
liquid.
sharing. To folks, we're going to try and do this. Stop sharing. So here you can see I have a bottle of Inspiral here, and you can see I have the tube, and one side is longer than the other, so I'm looking at it. Let me open the bottle here. I don't want this to spill on my computer, so I will be very gentle with this, putting the short side in. And see, it has a little block, so it
Ah,
sits, so it can't go all
that's
the way in. You
convenient.
can't get it too far in. It is, and you can't see it because it's in a dark bottle, but it's sitting maybe, I'm having trouble, maybe a half an inch to an inch. And so I would stick it up one side. It is strong stuff, folks. It is definitely strong stuff. And then stuck the other one, as you can tell, it does have an effect. You will know you're breathing this. And then you just take that out. So that's Inspiral. I really do love that. And it's probably good not just to talk about COVID, but also I'm going to go back and see if I can get back here. Um, we're prone to pneumonia as we get older, all these lung situations. So I actually did come down with pneumonia at one time. So that's how I got familiar with Inspiral, because of the breathing that I needed to do. Okay, takes a second to get this change. The other one I mentioned before in Build Your Immune, they called it a syrup, but Bar sells it as Respical. And it has that wild cherry bark and the horehound, etc. So you can buy that through Bar already made. Now, another thing for circulation, and I mentioned that this was my first and my favorite because of the power of belief. You're looking at my castor oil pack materials on my dining room table. And I believe in these, even not just if you're suffering from a list of whatever, because that's a long list and even more, but just as preventative. Just keep that circulation going, especially around our kidneys and our liver, across our abdomen. And I know as people get older, constipation becomes an issue. And this is a wonderful way to resolve that. And I set this up in the order it goes on me. There's this plastic here that I actually put on my bed. So I do it lying down on my bed. So I throw my covers off, and there's just a sheet there, and I put plastic down, and I usually put another towel down on it. Then I would lie and on this towel, and I want to stop because what I found with any Cayce thing, you need a space to have it all set up, and you also need to have a way that you'll do it. And so what I'm sharing with you now, if I can put it here, is this is a soaked with castor oil flannel cloth, right, that goes on the abdomen. And I put it in the Pyrex because I can store it this way. You can put it in your refrigerator or on the shelf. It depends how often you're using it. But if you don't like something cold up against you, put this in the microwave and then heat it up. That way you don't have to wait for your heating pad to heat it up. I mean, because otherwise you've got something cold against you. So let me go back to my screen. That was my little tip for the day with castor oil packs. But when I did this in 1980, I did not use the castor oil wipes or these special flannel things. It was all home done, right? And it works just as well. It's just that I found through the years, Bar does make really nice, like these disposable packs, because you've got this oily, castor oily thing on your skin, and then you want to put this so that your heating pad doesn't get oily. So the name of the game is, can you do this without getting oil on your bed or on your floor or in some other place that you didn't want it? But to me, the benefits far outweigh some of the oiliness of the castor oil.
And
So
what you're saying, Marianne, about being prepared is so true. After hearing some of your tips, I went in and organized all my materials. It makes such a difference. And yes, it is possible to do this without getting oil all over everything. You just
it
follow
really is.
the
And of course, I do say to people, there are a lot of YouTubes that help too. So you see how other people, how are they doing it? That type of thing. In that Japanese movie, the readings that I mentioned before, the Japanese actually have made a strap. So they put the pack around them and they walk around with the pack on them. They don't lie down on the bed. So, be as creative as your mind can be on that respect, and see where it goes. One of the things that Cayce often said to people, why do you want to be healthy? It's not enough to say, I want to get rid of the pain of arthritis or this thing or that thing. You have to have a reason to want to be healthy. So I thought of pictures of these happy people, whether you're on the beach or taking a walk, is a wonderful say, I'm alive, especially now that it's spring.
That is so true, is having the purpose, for why we want to be healthy. And many years ago, I had the privilege of working at the A.R.E clinic, which applied these readings in a medical practice. And there were certain principles about healing that Cayce actually introduced that are much more commonly accepted today, but at that time were considered quite unusual. But it's important to understand, again, why we're doing this. So can you talk to us some about what the principles are? What are Cayce's principles behind the healing process?
Thank you. So if you were to pick up a circulating file, the first parts of any file will say that Cayce says there's two major principles at work. One, all health comes from the divine. We live and move and have our breath. Everything is within a divine nature of some sort. And two, we must take our personal responsibility. And so those are broad, overreaching principles, right? It gets more difficult, more specific, as we delve down into the weeds of it all. But I did want to put here this Trish McKinley has this affirmation about the perfect health exists in my body. And I just thought that's something somebody could put on their refrigerator to constantly put that positive affirmation into the mind every day. Perfect health exists in my body, and it does. Okay, let's. The other thing I keep telling myself when I work on any of these projects and remedies is there are, in truth, no incurable conditions. Do you believe that? To the extent we believe that is the extent we heal ourselves or allow ourselves to be healed. But Cayce was very clear. We can cure anything. It may not be tomorrow. It's not a magic pill. It took us forever to get into the condition we're at. So we have to expect it may take us some time and effort to get out of that particular condition. But I always like what he said here about after breakfast, work a while, after lunch, rest a while, after dinner, walk a mile. The other thing, you should know that in my earliest days after graduating from college, I was a history teacher, and I actually taught about ancient Egypt even before I even knew anything about Edgar Cayce. Isn't that interesting how synchronicities creep up into our lives like that? But I love the story of Rata and the rejuvenation process that he underwent. And I put the reading numbers there for anybody who wants to get into the readings. It's a 294, that's Cayce's number, and it was reading number 147, 48, and 49. But in this story, he actually presents us with a template for how to rejuvenate our bodies. And I thought it's worth mentioning. You have to translate from ancient Egypt to modern America, but it's still the template. Rata is the life of Edgar Cayce, and according to that reading, it was a replica life. Edgar Cayce was a replica life of Rata. And I found that interesting. In the story, which I don't have time to really go into, we know that as high priest, Rata made rules and regulations of how to live in that society, but his own ego got the best of him, and the pharaoh and his cohorts decided to trick Rata into breaking one of those rules. And long story short, he did. And yes, of course, it has to do with a woman. Well, as soon as he broke this rule, he was banished along with about 231 people who decided to join him. They weren't banished, they went with him out into what's called Abyssinia. And they lived out there for a number of years, and he's getting older. And at the same time, though, in ancient Egypt, back in the hometown, the pharaoh was having a great deal of difficulty because Atlantis was just finally breaking up, and all of these immigrants and these hordes of immigrants from Atlantis were pouring into Egypt. And those Atlanteans were somewhat like, a lot of Americans are said to be Atlanteans in reincarnation. Well, those Atlanteans were really hoity-toity, and they thought they knew it all. They didn't have to obey those rules of the Egyptians because they knew better. So the pharaoh negotiates with Rata, come back, we need you. And so he came back, but on his way back, he realized his body was so old. He didn't think he had the energy to do what he knew he had to do. So I am sure it's part of his negotiation. He took 7 years, went into the Temple Beautiful, took with him a musician by the name Om Tek Ptah, and I put his reading number because he's fascinated. Excuse me. He understood sound and music and how they heal. And he would create instruments to replicate the natural sounds. Excuse me, I'll get to drink. And they would go chanting around the Temple Beautiful at the 7 statues. It took 7 years at the 7 chakras. And yet, as you know, it takes 7 years for the cells of our body to be completely reborn, rejuvenated, renewed. He also did diet and potions. I don't have time to go into that. So he's doing something for his body, but he also knew he had to deal with his mind and his negative emotions. He had to let go of that negative ego. And I'm sure he had them, right? He probably hated himself for breaking the rules. He probably wanted revenge on the pharaoh and the people who put him in that, sent him out into the desert. He's probably wanting regrets and bitterness, all those things that you and I, we all have these. But he said, let it go. Let it go. And in the third aspect, he knew in his spirit, he had to have a purpose. His purpose was to serve others, but he also knew that it was going to be to build the Great Pyramid. And it did. It took 100 years for them to build that Great Pyramid. So Rata lived over 200 years. Om Tek Ptah lived, I think, 254 years, according to the readings. There's no written records, obviously, of this time period. But really, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do for our body, our minds, and our spirit. So I love this saying about the spirit is life. The mind is the builder. The physical is the result. So here I am talking about therapies and remedies and things like that, but that's the result. It's the result of what we've done with our spirit. It's the result of what we've done with the thoughts in our mind. So today I ask you to know yourself. Don't go into denial. What kind of spirit do you exude to your friends or people? What's going on in your mind and emotions? What's there? What's trapped or not? And then your physical body. What is it? And I just want to say we do live in a yes universe. So whatever you are thinking about, if it's negative, the result is negative. If it's positive, it will be positive. So please dream big and remember it's a yes universe. I do want to give you a little piece of homework. I was a teacher at one time, and that is what feeds your spirit? We all need something. that gets us up and going. And I thought I'd share my what I answered the question to be by looking at my photographs. I like to take photographs. And I want you to think about yours. It doesn't have to be like mine at all. In fact, I hope it isn't. And it sort of reminds me of back in the 80s when we did treasure boards to try and manifest things in our life. But this is really what feeds your spirit. And you can see in the upper left, that's my oldest son with his number 2 son. And we went backpacking up in the high Sierras because my oldest son wanted to share that with his son now that they live in North Carolina. And he wanted to say how beautiful and wonderful it is in the mountains of California. And the beauty below that is that night at a campsite on our way deeper into the Sierras, just how beautiful it is. It feeds my spirit to be out by the trees. I probably should have well, there is a little picture in my backyard, but I must live with trees to feed my spirit. The other thing that feeds my spirit is travel. And this has been a horrible year because I wanted to go see Egypt. I couldn't do it. These pictures are of a trip I took to Morocco. And that's the interior of a riad, which was the rich Arab's house. And the outside, very plain house. On the inside, a beautiful garden with water and trees and smells. And the food of Morocco is fabulous. It's organic. They are not allowed to use pesticides in Morocco because they sell their food to the European Union. So if you want pesticide-free food, go to Morocco. The other picture is community. It feeds me to be on some of these tours and just being with people to share ideas. And that's why I love about the community, A.R.E. community, when we could have in-person programs and talk and share. Below that is my Cayce library part. Those are Cayce books that feed my spirit, and I go running to them when I need some information. In the upper right, the creativity, it's a picture off my deck. I have redwood trees and a creek in my backyard. And I can't grow rhododendrons down by the creek because the deer will eat them. So I have to put them up on a deck. And as Joyce said, I work with Thomas Allen on sound healing, but I play the piano and I love that technical side as well as the mystical side.
Wow. I'm just basking in those beautiful images. And that's so important now to find the things that feed our spirit. And we, at least this year, have had time to think about that as we have all been forced to slow down. So it's one thing we can do, a positive thing we can carry forward. And another big part of the readings too had to do with vibrations and how we are vibrational beings and how therapies can affect our vibrations for health. Could you talk about this subject?
Sure can. That's probably one of my most favorite. Cayce, and you see him on that couch, it was a picture there, said that life in all of its manifestations is vibration. And it's been said many ways that God, and Nikola Tesla said, I think if you want to know God, think electricity, but it's vibration and pulses. And I sort of like the graphic there that we are the individualizations, the entities, those dots. You're a dot, I'm a dot. We're all floating and vibrating in this sea of love and consciousness. And that is the basis of everything. We talked about the cells have to vibrate at a certain rate. And I guess I go into that right now. So let me just back off of that statement and read this, that every individual entity is on a certain vibration. And I'm going to stop and just sort of talk through this, that your name is your vibration, whether it's Joy, Marianne, it's putting out a vibration of us and you. And the town that you live in has a vibration. And as that vibration, it has a consciousness. So if you live in Berkeley, there's a certain consciousness there, or Santa Monica, or Los Robles, or wherever. All of those are carrying vibrations around. And that's why I think I like trees. They have a certain vibration that I respond to, and it keeps me healthy. But Cayce said every dis-ease or disease is creating in the body the opposite or non-coordinate vibration with the conditions in a body, mind, and spirit of the individual. So if you want to be healed, you just need to find the correct vibrations. And those vibrations can bring back healing, because whether it's a cell or the organ, they need to be vibrating at certain vibrations so they can do their business. They can replicate and be healthy. And so that's a lot of what's going on underneath the food, the exercise, whatever we're talking about, is finding those vibrations. And my most favorite, besides the castor oil pack, has always been the Radiac. That was the other thing I invested in a long time ago. They aren't cheap either, but it can last a lifetime. And I will say that one time, a prior one that I had, fell off of a window ledge. And so sometimes if you have accidents, you can talk to bar, and sometimes they will just replace it. I guess it depends on the situation. They don't want to be scammed. But you have to understand that these, actually, let me talk this through, and then I'll share my personal Radiac with you. I took this picture from bar because it sort of shows a setup. Obviously, bar sells these little containers, but I use one I use for juice. It should be plastic. Has to be plastic. So whatever you have for water or whatever that could fit with the Radiac in it. The other problem with it is you need ice. When I first moved into the house I had, the refrigerator didn't even have an ice maker, and it had a very small ice chest part. So that, sometimes we have more problems to solve than we think, but they're all resolvable. And I now have a refrigerator with automatic ice, and I don't have to worry about ice anymore. Because what you do is you set this unit in ice for 20 minutes before you hook it up. You see that it comes with a setup. You can see it has these wires and a book. And I'm going to talk about it. I recommend meditate with it for 30 minutes or listen to music or whatever calms you. And there are rules here. And so you can see here, it says right wrist, red wire, and then left ankle, black wire. So let me stop sharing, and maybe, oh dear, the unaccounted for late afternoon sun. And maybe on the next one, I'll jump up out of my thing. I guess I could go like this for a little bit. I won't be quite so much in the sunshine here. Another part of my living room here. Anyway, another tree, right? Okay. So here's my Radiac. It's not the beautiful blue Radiac that you get when you purchase it, because what you do when you use a Radiac is after you use it, you put it in a window that has the sun, or you take it outside if you have enough sunny days. And what it is it has 2 carbon plates separated by glass. We can't see inside of it, but that's what it is. That's why I was concerned about breaking. Did the glass break inside? I don't know. But you can also see it has, like a battery, a red and a black wire. And I was telling Joy when we were sort of chatting about it the other day, yes, there are rules to a Radiac, but we have rules for eating too, right? We have to eat our salad before we eat dessert. Well, just think of it that way. It's just the way things are. And you have a little rule. So I have a red wire here. So find a camera. And you put the red wire in first. And I'll put this on my computer. Hopefully it won't fall off. And at the other end of this long wire, you will see that it has Velcro. You can hear it, right? You're going to see it in a minute. So it has a little metal disc, and this is black Velcro. And the point is to find where your pulse is, and you can feel it. I'm thinking I should probably jump up and do something.
Sure, go right ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry to do this, folks, but it's sort of like
that's okay.
we didn't practice it at 5.
Yeah, really. Who knew? And I'll put in a plug for this appliance. For me, it has always been a wonderful tool for relaxation and well-being. There is something about it that whether it's you call it balancing one's vibrations or what, but it has a wonderful effect on me when I use it.
And I should say that the readings say only about 1% of the people ever feel anything, but I just go to sleep. I just zone out. It just shows you how uptight I am, I guess. But it's a wonderful thing to relax by. So you basically find that point, and of course this is hard to do in a program, easier to do when you're dealing with it. You just put the Velcro around and it stays in place. So it's on my pulse. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Now, I won't go through the whole thing, but obviously you have to have a black wire go into the black. And what I do to make it easy, there's a rule. The black wire cannot touch the red wire. These two do not like each other. They're not good friends in that respect. So I keep little baggies, and when they're not in use, I actually keep them in their baggies so they will never cross wires or touch each other. So then you just put the black there, and the black, this one will go on the left ankle. Because I'm not doing this, I'll take this off. It's not hooked up into ice. But my other little trick for this is I purchased a really teeny little notebook. And this is a real one. You can actually see it. It shows a date there. That's this date. It was, I guess I opened in 2014. And there's 4 days. It goes day 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I keep track of the red wire and the black wire. So RW means right wrist, and then the black is on the left ankle. You don't need to have it quite so detailed because it's just going in a clockwise position. So if you're doing this every day, you begin to know, oh, it's going from my right wrist to my left wrist, it's going down my ankle, it's moving this way and that. But I guess Virgos like to keep the science there. I don't know.
Well, it helped me because I went in and I've now got my appliance all organized and ready to go, and found my container and it's sitting in the sun. So it truly is. Your organizational skills are appreciated. And one question about that: do those little electrodes need to be cleaned?
Yes, they actually give you a piece of emery sanding, and so because your body is actually putting off sweat and things like that, what I do is you just sand them gently. This particular set, I got a new set of things. Has too much Velcro. I need to cut it off anyway. You just sand them, and then it takes all the sweat or the deposits from your skin off, and it's charged and ready to go. I just like to imagine the energy flowing in, this clockwise motion, because I'm so aware it's going from this arm to this ankle to that ankle. And of course, as they say in the readings or the little booklet, they do give you a little booklet that shows you exactly what it looks like and has, the left and right attachments and things like that. So they guide you through the system until it becomes automatic. You won't have to look at that at all. There's something else I was going to say about it, but it slipped my mind. I just love what it does in terms of moving the circulation. Oh, I know what I was going to say, that if you say you get interrupted, like on day, well, you can see it here. If you looked at my chart here, it stopped on day 1. See right there at the bottom? I stopped on a day 1. Now, if I flipped it over, it would say day 2. Then you just pick up and you have to start where you stopped, even though there's a time period. So if you start after the first day, that's okay, but just go to day 2. So you have to keep that flow going. The other thing is it's yours for life. Don't let anybody else use it. You can't share it in a family. The biggest downside is I love my glass of red wine in the afternoons, and you cannot use a Radiac and drink alcohol. There must be a 24-hour period without alcohol. So don't drink alcohol when you're using the Radiac.
Is that both before and after use, 24 hours before and 24 hours after?
It's usually stated before,
Okay.
24 hours before. I think I'm a purist. I would give it the full benefit of the 24 hours because I don't know how fast any of the lymph is moving in my body. It's probably not that fast. So I would probably stay away.
Okay.
But that would be a personal research project. I'm into personal research projects. So let me pull back up here again. That was all about the Radiac. And I already talked about that. Let me get this to go. Okay. The other favorite one, and I'll take this down again, is the violet ray. Here in Northern California, we sell the cheap one, the portable high frequency one when we had in-person events. Yuen, sure, if you know her, she has them at her house. I'm sure if somebody wanted one, they might contact her. I have no idea, if she would mail it or not. I just don't have that information. But I do believe in this particular product. As I have in the little picture, it was designed by Tesla. It's called a Tesla coil. And it's charging up within this body. I'm trying to reach for one right now because I'm going to share it with you. And that comes up into this vacuum tube, and it actually creates ozone. And you can actually smell sometimes the ozone that's produced. And it does make a violet ray. And this is the cosmetic one, the cheaper one. So if you want to get rid of wrinkles or hair growth, sometimes with your eyes, it said, different skin conditions. It was very popular in the 1920s. Bar, on the other hand, sells a very powerful one. You can see it goes international, 230 volts. And so if you had, say, rheumatoid arthritis or something, a real medical condition, that you would probably want the Bar product. I have one, or I did have one. I gave it to a daughter-in-law who is having real trouble with issues in her body. So she has that one, and I've just been using this cheaper one. But let me just share that with you. This is the unit, and it has at the bottom here a on-off switch, and I've turned it on. Can you hear that?
Yes.
And now it's building. I don't know if you can see the blue. I can see it here.
Yes, we can.
It's a little bit of violet coming across. Color across the Zoom thing is a different thing than reality. But this, if you want more hair growth, this is the comb, and it does zap you when you first put it on. I don't want to mess my hair up, but when you put it on your skin, it'll just zap you at the beginning. You can almost see the violet in a way on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it does come, you can only use it for 10 minutes. And these are interchangeable. So I just pull it out. And if I wanted to do the one with my face, I can quickly, if I can reach over here, quickly. Of course, the box wants to stick. And I'm at an odd angle to the box. There we go. I was thinking I should get this out now that I notice I'm getting more wrinkles. But then this one's a little easier to show. Oh, this is adjustable, by the way. It doesn't have to be at full power. But then you could then put it on your skin like this, get rid of the wrinkles wherever you're feeling wrinkly. And as I say, it's only 10 minutes, but once again, it's what I found is I needed to have it in the bathroom in a place where I would use it. If it's in a drawer, if it's in the next room, I'm probably not going to do it. So, sort of how do you organize your life for some of the Cayce products? Okay, let's see if I notice time is getting short. Anyway, the other thing Cayce would say is he often said, get a massage, as you know, so that you're trying to get the spinal fluids going up and down and moving through the passages. And I would also say use acupuncture or acupressure if it's available. Um, I'd like to see us be able to have more programs with massage out here in California. Joy and I were just talking about that before this program. And maybe we can come up with a way to get some of the Virginia Beach massage teachers to come out to California and teach us some of the things that we could do for ourselves or for other people, or even get some of our massage therapists that we go to join this program so they can learn the Cayce way of massage. Yogananda said, God is in the spine, meaning the Kundalini forces rise up the spine. So it's another reason why it's so important to, for our spinal health. And I did hear once that our chiropractors of today were probably the high priests of ancient Egypt, because they would all deal with the spine. It was sort of interesting.
You know, one of the very interesting and amazing people who was involved with Edgar Cayce was Harold J. Riley, who Cayce started referring people to him in trance, and he had no idea who Riley was, and Riley had no idea who this fellow Cayce was. But they eventually connected, and he created the acronym CARE for the Cayce Health Principles. And I didn't know until we started talking, he was the origin of this saying, the life of Riley, that Bob Hope came up with. So we're interested in hearing how he got that name, and also more about the CARE principles.
Okay, so both. Let me get to the slide. Yes, Harold J. Riley was actually a physical therapist who worked at the Rockefeller Center there in New York. And he founded his practice about 1935. And Cayce was constantly giving him referrals. And the people would go to Harold Riley and say, well, Cayce sent us. And you know, who's that? They finally do meet up and have obviously a wonderful relationship. And Harold Riley wrote a book that I'm going to recommend at the end of the program. But the C, so to go to CARE, C is for circulation. And I think one of the best ways to think about it, especially for Southern California, is think of it like your freeway system. You know, when there are no cars and nothing's clogging the highways, we just love to get from A to B there in the LA area. But if it's lots of cars and lots of things clogging up the system, you know, it's just hell to pay on the 405 or wherever we're going. So what we need to do, and what I've obviously been talking about in a different way with the castor oil pack and the vibrational electrotherapies, is trying to keep everything in the blood and the lymph, everything flowing, everything moving in some sort of an energy flow. Harold Riley, I understand, retired in 1965. That was long after Cayce passed in 1945. So very interesting relationship of mutual benefit. In CARE, the A stands for assimilation. I think I misspelled that word. Anyway, the food that you take in obviously has to be assimilated into our bodies to be used in some format or other. I think what's interesting now, in case he didn't talk about it then, is that we're knowing more now about the gut brain, that the gut has a brain of its own that communicates with our head brain, our intellectual brain. And I don't have time to go into that, but there's some wonderful programs now about the interplay between the gut and the brain and its role in assimilation of foods. We do know that Cayce said eat right, and I mentioned this before, and you can actually buy that little thing that you see there in the graphic is actually a photograph of one I keep on my refrigerator, or I did for a while, but it was so hard to live up to. I sort of thought this is becoming negative, so I put it aside. But I did want to mention that one of the things I find talking to people when they want to know what's alkaline or acidic is that it's not the food itself, it's the metabolism of the food. So sometimes you might say, well, a lemon's acidic. No, because when it's actually being metabolized, it creates an alkaline situation. So acidic foods tend to be all of your meats, and yes, there's an exception, all grains except, and all dairy except. So you want to eat less of those acidic foods. That's the goal. If you're a vegetarian, you might want to check more into the all grains except, which you can find out on your own. The Cayce also said, be sure not to combine certain foods. No citrus fruit with your cereal. Boy, we did that all the time. And I grew up in San Diego and we had an orange tree. We always had orange juice with our cereal. Oh, well, maybe that's my problem today. And no milk or cream with coffee or tea, and no white bread with spaghetti. So they're the rules again, and we're all just trying to get more alkaline. So how do you know if you're alkaline or acid? I bought some of these from Bar. That jar cost maybe $13.99 or something like that, say $14. And it's filled with these little strips of paper. And you take a spoon and you spit into it. And then you take your little strip of paper and dip it in there, and it comes out with a color. And it actually, they say between 7.0 and 7.4 is the most alkaline. That's the sweet spot of the paper color thing. So I don't do this every day. I don't think we really need it every day, but if you feel like you want to make sure the body's more alkaline than it is acid, I think it's a wonderful investment. And I won't take this down, but on the side of the bottle, that color chart is on the bottle, so you don't have to pull something else out. It's right there so you can see it. But it's a good way to keep in check, because if your body's acid, it's when you're most likely to get sick. Because if your body's alkaline, then it's not going to allow those nasty little germs to begin taking over your body. I'm going to skip the R that's relaxation, but E is for elimination. And it's just to be aware that we have these 6 organs: our lungs through our breath, the skin through sweat, the kidneys and the liver, they're making urine and feces and eliminating those parts of waste. So as we've learned with COVID-19, that lungs and part is very important. Another way to eliminate toxins, of course, is the apple diet. And I bet, Joy, you've done this. Have you
Oh,
done the
yes, yes, many times.
Yes, I don't know who's on the program, but I'm sure they're saying yes many times. And I'd say, have you done this recently? Because don't forget that Edgar Cayce said it will cleanse all toxic forces from any system. It's just eating apples for 3 days, and you need to have that olive oil, either a little bit each day or at the end, because your gallbladder is needing fat, or it would cause you great pain and problems. But I wanted to share, well, I'll share in a second then. I did want to say that if you do have digestive issues, this American saffron is highly recommended. I didn't have any in my cupboard, but I took this picture of making it fresh and take it at night. And then it keeps all your elimination passageways clean. This is John Pagano's way to make it, excuse me. And he was, as you know, the guru for healing psoriasis, and still remains so.
So some of the things that we know we need to do are change our habits as well. so that we are healthier. And yet it's so hard to lose weight, apple diet or no, stopping smoking, stopping drinking. Um, can you offer us some advice and some advice from Cayce as to how to change our habits so that we can achieve some of these goals?
I can share with you what I've learned. If I had the full picture, I'd probably be a very wealthy woman, right? Or get people to follow all of Cayce.
Yes, that's the answer.
But I did want to share my own personal health regimen that I did in conjunction with Dr. Peter Shobe, who is a chiropractor from Virginia Beach who came out to Northern California and would give talks and do chiropractic in San Rafael. And I was with him one time. I wanted to lose weight, a perpetual issue with me. And so we got into this little project of me doing the apple diet, and then at the same time also use the detoxified iodine. Now, this is not a Cayce or a bar product, and there's a big debate about that iodine I don't want to get into right now, but um, I started into it. I ended up doing it for 11 weeks. I do have here, and I won't pull this down again, but I have another notebook that is a documentation day by day of what the date was, what my weight was, where I was with the apple diet, and where I was with the iodine. Because with iodine, you had to add a drop each day and then take it down a day. So I did that. And I think the important lesson here was you have to pulse whatever you're doing. You'll notice that everything with Cayce is pulsing. Um, don't pulse your big pharma drugs. You can't do that with those. But with natural products, if you're taking even vitamins, you have to take them and stop, take and stop, so that your body does not stop learning how to make that, whatever it is it's doing at that point. I just want to make that point. I think it's really important. But so anyway, 3 days of apples and 4 days without, and then iodine. Did I lose weight? Yes. But when I look at my little notebook here, it was about 2 pounds a week. So it was not spectacular. It was not out of the ordinary. I did do it for those 11 weeks. But the result, I told Joy, I can't stand the sight of an apple. If somebody said to me, okay, let's go on the apple diet, that would take a lot for me. I would do it with somebody in a study group, maybe, if they wanted to experience that. And it's good to have camaraderie sometimes for those 3 days. But I just don't like apples. So that's a negative. But one of the other things about weight loss that I wanted to share is that sometimes it's more than just the chemistry. It's more than just our childhood food habits. That sometimes it actually can be a karmic situation. And because I have been involved with all of this and reincarnation and the psychics of different people and different sorts, I found that karma is simply a memory, a past life memory, in a way that's being played out with my body. So I'm going to tell you my story. And you can think about your life, or you can consult a psychic, and maybe you have, or a spirit guide, and can find a way to see the connection if you're having any of those issues. Mine was in about 1579, we know Sir Francis Drake sailed into San Francisco Bay and claimed it for Elizabeth I. And then his men, of course, they all go out looking for resources and different things. I mean, that was standard practice. At the time, I was in the Miwok Indians out in Point Reyes. I was some sort of shaman. I don't have much information about that, except I was a woman trying to keep the tribe on the narrow path, so to speak. And here come these sailors, or, maybe they weren't a sailor per se, but these men off Drake's boat. And they sort of settled into the village. And this is a drawing of Drake being presented some gifts from the Miwok Indians. Well, my husband in this life was one of those Drake's men. And Drake's men, if you think about their ships, they're on the boat a long time. They probably brought alcohol with them, and they certainly knew how to make it, and probably brought sugar and salts and things like that to preserve food. So in my life, what I faced was a husband who became an alcoholic. He was alcoholic before. It just didn't show itself until the marriage. And for me, my struggle was not about alcohol, not that at all, but I struggle with a food addiction called carbohydrates and sugar. And so I think in one sense, this whole dynamic uh, played out with my husband and I, and it led me into finding out more about myself, more about him too. He's passed, so his story's being played out in the spirit world, but um, it helps me understand that this is hard for me because it's past life. It's more than just this life where these issues have been paramount. So it's just coming up with a consciousness and awareness and to let go, just to let go of it all. It's not easy, but I can let go.
Hmm.
Casey would say, drink water. Right, here's another reading. 2 quarts. That's a lot of water. And I know my mother's secret to that in her old age was she would get a container that held 32 ounces of water that she felt she needed to drink each day. And she would only drink her water from that container. So she knew at the end of the day where she was. And I thought, that's pretty ingenious, because if I just go to the tap and pull a glass of water here, there, I can fool myself and not drink as much as I think I've had. So that's my little tip. As I said before, I like to walk. And Casey said to walk an hour a day, right? After dinner, walk an hour, take a walk. But I wanted to do a little promotion for A.R.E tours. They're, of course, getting ready to gear up again. Hopefully they can. It's been a hard year. But I went on this tour called the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And you can see the pictures there of the group walking. That's actually a Roman road. The Romans made all the roads in Spain because they wanted the silver and the gold and all the other resources, the cereal grains, etc. But actually, St. James the Apostle, after Jesus died, when they split, St. James is said by story to have taken a boat through the Mediterranean and up the coast of Europe to Spain and went inland to Santiago, and it's now Santiago de Compostela. And during the Middle Ages, the Pope said that if you walked this Camino and you walked the 100 kilometers, which is 62 miles, from a place called Sarria to Santiago de Compostela, if you did the whole thing, you would get a certificate that forgave all your sins, 100% of your sins. And I will say that when you walk the Camino, when you end up in Santiago, and if you do apply to get the Compostela to prove you walked, and there's a system for that, you have a little passport and get stamps. When you get that Compostela, some people, you have to put down why you walk the Camino. And over 500,000 people walk the Camino before COVID, just before COVID. That's how many people walk this. And it's a beautiful walk. It's got great food, organic, whatever. It's a walk of a lifetime to know yourself. And I do highly recommend this A.R.E tour of Spain, Camino de Santiago. Did we get tired? Yes, that's a chapel there, a very ancient chapel. You can see we've toured the chapel, but we just want to rest.
And gee, I thought you were down there doing exercises.
You could think that. Whatever you want to think. But we did get our Compostela. It's in Latin, and with our names as close to Latin as possible. So I love that tour. Another thing I've noticed about us aging is cataracts. And yes, I know Western medicine has a simple, easy cataract operation, right? And Casey said that cataracts are impaired circulation and, eliminations that have been slowed down. And there's some other reasons that are listed there. But I'm mentioning this because this is my newest and latest Casey project, if you want to call them action projects, of because the last time I had an eye exam, they said, oh, your right eye, it looks like a cataract is trying to form. So I've been researching the formula, and we don't have Irish potatoes, but we do have white potatoes. I'm holding one in my hand, but you peel the potato and grate it, and you put it in gauze that you can get in a kitchen store. Put it on your eyes for 30 to 60 minutes, and then wash it with an eye wash. You can go to a pharmacy and get. This one that I have is called Soothing Eye Wash, and it actually has boric acid in it. And then you do it for a couple of weeks. So this one's to be determined. Marianne will have to report back because I'll need another eye exam to prove that works and become a new favorite of mine. I just wanted to put this up here about the detoxified iodine. Bar sells it as atomic iodine. It's a different process, and there's much debate as to which is better for you. But I came across the fact that if you have hypertension, which I do, not to use it. So I've sort of backed away from that product. We know that skin is part of the elimination part. And I just wanted to put up Egyptian oil. I was going to bring some to share, but it's so oily. my container is. I just thought, no, I think I'll leave it in my bathroom. But I have also Palma Christi and a peanut oil, of course, for massage to keep away from arthritis in your hands. And I have recommended that to people. And I have a friend that she watches TV and then she massages the peanut oil into her hands while she watches TV. So it's another sort of trick of the trade to do it when you find a time. I was telling Joy before, I love the gold cream. It's expensive. It's almost $30 for a small container. I love what it feels to my skin. I haven't used it for a while. Well, definitely not for 2020. But apparently, Casey said that the gold helps your immune system. And he would recommend people in his time going down to Virginia Beach and lie in the sand because that sand had a high gold content back then. I've been told that's not true anymore. So you have to find the gold in some other way, like this gold cream, to have beautiful skin. Another product I use a lot is Ipseb because I have receding gums. And so I use the toothpaste and I have the powder. And I have the powder because I don't use it very often because when you sprinkle it for your toothbrush, it seems to go everywhere but the toothbrush. So I've got to figure out maybe put it in a container and dip it into the container or something like that. I haven't figured that one out yet because the toothpaste is so much easier. Glyco I love too for what it does in your mouth. And I actually, when I go on tours, I put this in a container of some sort so that I can use it. Because when you're touring, you're around different foods and different bacterias and things like that. So I take along some of these products.
So this has been amazing. I mean, I'm going to have to buy a new medicine cabinet for all of these things. And some of them I have, and it's greatly inspirational to be inspired about using them. But let's finally talk about the role of the mind in disease. We talked about attitudes and emotions. Why is it so important to engage our mind in the healing process?
Well, let me ask you this first, Joy. I see that it's approaching 6:30, and I know our people probably didn't count on it lasting maybe that long. Do you want me to do this, or should I just end with laughter and or just have time for questions and go from there? I leave it to you.
Okay. We have a couple of questions. I've been asking questions from people as we've gone along. Let me ask these two questions briefly, and then maybe we could just quickly summarize the mind and the laughter part. One person wanted to know with the radiac, if they forgot their cycle or where they were in it, should they just start over? And I assume the answer would be yes. Is that true?
I think that's the only thing you can do. If you have no documentation, start at day one. But I really, even though you don't have to keep it day by day, what I would recommend, if you know you aren't coming back to it, put it in with the radiac or tape it to it, ended day 3, because day 3 is always going to be the same, certain setup.
Okay. Okay. And the other one was about the contact for getting the less expensive violet ray, which I know you mentioned it wasn't available right now, but we could certainly share it with people after the program. When we send access to the tape, we can send that information on.
That'd probably be wisest, because I probably need to speak to the gal that was selling them to see what's up with her. You obviously, there is Google. I think I saw some on Etsy. Something, if you just Googled where can I buy, the violet ray, you can see different prices. Just be aware. Don't be taken in by, there's like anything, like I was showing with hand sanitizer. Some people charge an exorbitant amount. That's why I put the prices there to show what I felt was fair. But let me check with UN and we'll see what we can send out to people.
Okay, thanks. And love this slide. I mean, how many times have we felt like this little creature?
That marmot is me in life.
Yeah.
A fearful Enneagram, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Any other question, or shall I'll
Those were the two that we hadn't asked yet. So
okay, let me just rush through some of these, and I'll skip some, but because mind is the power, is the builder, and the nemesis of us is really the fear. We're so fearful, and Cayce basically said, what freedom is when you no longer are fearful, when you trust the universe and you know this is for your benefit, no matter what, and you let go of fear. That is true freedom. And that is something for us to aspire to, because we all know that where fear goes to, right? The dark side, and the fear goes to anger, and anger goes to hate, and hate goes to suffering. And this is just not good. Plus, we all know now that Cayce said thoughts are real, they're things. And your cells are listening to your thoughts. I don't think we think of it that way, but it's true. That's how it gets into our system and creates that dissonance, that resistance to the perfect divine resonance that we have in our cells. So resentments of any nature bring their fruit in the physical. We just have to let it go. I know with COVID, a lot of us spent sleepless nights, and when we wanted to be like the kitty cat, but
yes.
it's that high cortisol and I brought this up because that has to do with our adrenal system. And my neighbor for more than 30 years just passed away because of adrenal failure, which means somebody under tremendous stress. So if you do everything we've been talking about, uh, that will reduce stress. I did want to bring up, we do have in A.R.E. the 40-day forgiveness prayer, and I could send that as a PDF to Joy, and we could get it out. If you don't have it, we could do
Sure.
that. This is all about our self-transformation. And I just liked what Lao Tzu said. If you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken yourself, all of yourself. If you want to eliminate the suffering in the world, then eliminate all that is dark and negative in yourself. Truly, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own self transformation.
Mm.
And we could do this on a whole different program about meditation, R for meditation. And I always love the fact that Hugh Lynn Cayce would go around saying, the only decision you need to make today is, are you going to meditate?
Mm.
And so much of that would cure everything we've been talking about, because it
Yes.
eliminates all that. We remember Masaru Emoto and how words affect water. Well, our words are affecting our cells, that type of thing. I'm going to skip through this. This is the power of Om, but we don't really have much time. I do, there's in longevity, and this is a case for meditation. When you meditate, that actually creates a vibration within your pineal gland. And Cayce said, keep the pineal gland operating and you won't grow old. You will always be young. Now, that's a case for meditation if I've ever heard. Now, the other thing we know is Cayce loved humor. He had humor in his readings, and it strengthens your immune system. And his son, Edgar Evans, actually has a book. I have it here called Humor from the Edgar Cayce readings. I don't know if it's in print or not, but it has a lot of the humorous things. Like somebody said, should I keep going to the same doctors? And this is Cayce in a reading. If you want to die. Okay. So, he's definitely saying we need to be helpful, cheerful, be optimistic, and make at least 3 people laugh a day. I hope I've made 3 of you laugh in this program, so I got my quota. But I love this little joke about the cats. They always push everything off a mantle. I wonder if this will bounce. Nope. Maybe that one will. And that's an optimist right there.
The scientist.
Yes. And of course, the fruits of the spirit of, people by the proof of the spirit, the love, the joy, the peace. Those are the people you want to be around, and qualities you want to develop in yourself. I remember Charles Thomas Cayce came to Northern California and had us draw one of these out of a hat, and then told us that whatever we drew out of the hat was what we needed to work on. I think I drew patience. Anyway, my advice, go forth, live, laugh, and love, and be of service or a channel of blessings to someone today. And I think, Joy, I'll just end that right there and stop sharing.
Oh, that's beautiful. Marianne, thank you so much. I hope everybody who's been listening is both educated and inspired to pick up a couple of these remedies or techniques or practices and really start improving our lives and being the people we want to be and the people that we were born to be. We will be sending out a tape of today's program, and also just wanted to share a couple of resources for you. For more information, we have a Southern California newsletter that you can subscribe to. Information about study groups, about Facebook. We have a Facebook page, a meetup group. We announce our events on the website and also in the Edgar Cayce California website. So there's lots of ways that we can keep in touch. And finally, just want to mention our next meeting, which is going to be, oops, sorry, I clicked on a link. This is our next meeting on April 25th at 5 o'clock. And Peter Woodbury, who is, as you may know, a wonderful and popular A.R.E. speaker and a great guy, speaking of a sense of humor. The hows and whys of hypnotic regression, of how we can use that to remember our past lives. We touched on how important it is to understand our past so that we can create a better future and a better life for ourselves. So that's our next program coming up on the 25th of April. And we also have in June, we'll be sending out this announcement as well, Kevin Tedeschi, who literally wrote the book on dreams, talking to us about how to interpret our dreams. So thank you again so much, Marianne. This was a wonderful presentation. And again, learned so much. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.